Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Welcome to another video. Today we're going to be doing section 3, Tajweed, and today is lesson 6, which is going to be a two-part video. Rules of stopping and starting. It's been a long overdue video, but I just wanted to make sure that I covered all the, uh, you know, preparatory material or the previous material before I got into this topic. So this is going to be the first of two-part videos. So let's get into it. On the agenda today, we have our review of the previous lesson, which is going to be Ahkam Mim Sakin. Then we're going to do our warm-ups as usual. Well, I'm not going to do the warm-ups. I'm going to ask you to do the warm-ups, and then we're going to memorize our letter collections. Then we're going to do our rules of starting and stopping. Today is part 1 of the video. Next time is going to be part 2. Then I'm going to assign maybe 1 or 2 exercises for you, and that's going to be the end of the lesson for today. So last time we talked about Ahkam Mim Sakin, and if you remember, there were 3. There is whenever you have a letter Mim that is Sakin, meaning it has a sukun on it, then there are 3 rules that apply to it. There are 3 rules that are listed here, are Izhar Shafawi, Ikhfa Shafawi, Idgham Shafawi, and when Mim Sakin is followed by another Mim, then we do Idgham Shafawi, which means merging with the lips. It's simple to remember. It only applies to the letter meme. So that means whenever a meme sakin is immediately followed by another meme, you merge the two while holding the sound a little bit then that's in warm-up number 15 where I ask you to do that, um, in the warm-ups. Next one is ikhfa shafawi, which means hiding with the lips. And this one is also very easy to remember. It applies only to the letter ba, which means that whenever a meme sakin is followed immediately by a letter ba, you hide the meme sound while holding the meme sound a little bit. And again, this is warm-up number 15 in your list of warm-ups. And finally, last time we talked about izhar shafawi, which means to express with the lips, and it applies only, to every letter except the letter meme and ba, which are the 2 that you see on the left. The ibhar is on the right. And when meme socket is followed by a letter other than meme or ba, you show the meme sound, you express it clearly. You don't hold it or hide it like you do in ikhfa or ibhar. So the first 3 examples in the top row are ibhar. The second 3 examples in the second row are ikhfa, and the third are idgham. So let's get into it. I'll quickly pronounce them for you. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إنهم لصالوا ألم نجعل هم فيه أنهم مبعوثون قلوبهم ما ربهم من ترميهم بحجارة كنتم به فإذا هم بالساهرة. And that is our previous lessons. Again, I'm going to ask you to do the warm-ups. Please watch out the warm-ups video. Please do the warm-ups. Please do not skip. Let's go ahead and continue to memorize and keep continuing to remember our letter collections. These are the letter collections that we've been memorizing. Throat, lip, tafkhim, idgham, mad, and qalqala letters. So what were the throat letters? And they are the same as the letters of Kha, Hamza, Ha, Ain, Ha, Ain, Kha. Lip letters, which means those whose primary point of articulation is the lips, is Fa, Waw, Ba, and Mim. And tafkhim letters are those letters that are always pronounced heavy, as if your mouth is full of food. Oh, very heavy. That's the to make heavy, or is صاد, ضاد, ضا, wa, غين, خاء, and قاف are the letters of tafkhim. The next we have idgham letters. And if you remember أحكام النون الساكنة والتنوين, the idgham letters in أحكام النون الساكنة والتنوين were يرملون, or ya, ra, mim, lam, waw, noon, yarmalun. The mud letters, or three letters of elongation, are alif, waw, and ya. Next, we have the qalqal letters, and you can remember these by jad qutub or qutub jad, qaf, ta, ba, jim, dal. And these are the letters, whenever they have a sukun on them, you bounce the sound a little bit. Um, if you want, you can watch the qalqala video I uploaded in the channel before. Okay, on to today's lesson. The rules of stopping and starting, and my primary objective for this video and these videos, not there's going to be a multi-part video, is to make sure that you don't get lost in the intricacies of the details, because it can get a little bit complicated, especially for beginners. It is to give you guidelines on how to stop and start. If you really want to learn the details, meaning if you really want to know what the details are and why specifically a rule and what it means and things like that, if you want to get into the details, you definitely should if that's what you want to do. But that's not what I'm going to do today. What I want you to do is, if you want to learn these details, I want you to find a teacher at your local masjid and ask them to help you. But the primary purpose of these guidelines and rules that I'm going to propose to you today is that we want to make sure that we recite the Quran as the Prophet ﷺ used to recite it. We do not change the meaning of any of the verses of the Quran, which would become problematic, and we just want to make sure that the beauty of the recitation of the Quran is maintained. That's the primary purpose of the rules that we're going to be going over today. And again, these are more like guidelines instead of rules, and they're curated with beginners in mind. What I mean by that is there are so many ways that exceptions can be taken to the guidelines slash rules that I'm going to be proposing for you today. And because those exceptions can become complicating and, at least for beginners, very difficult to keep track of, these guidelines are what you should be keeping in mind. One of the guidelines that I recommend for you that I'm going to talk about later is to make sure that you stop at the end of a verse. So when you see the circular sign with a little number in the middle, you know that's the end of the verse. One of the guidelines that I'm giving you is that you should stop at that point. It's not necessarily a rule, because if you don't want to, you don't have to stop at that point, with certain exceptions. And what those exceptions are, etc. If you really want to go into those details, you can find a teacher at your local masjid, ask them to help you. But that's not what we're going to go into today. I have curated these guidelines with these three primary purposes in mind that you see on your screen. Make sure we recite as the Prophet recited, we do not change the meaning, and we maintain the beauty of the recitation. I hope that's clear. So let's get into it. When to stop and when you should be stopping on while you're reciting the Quran. The specifics of this again can get complicated for beginners. So here is a visual that you can use to remember, or here's what you should remember. If you don't memorize this visual, don't worry, we will go into a lot of these details. But the reference for this visual is on your screen as well. It's a great blog post. You can go read them. I'll put the URL to the blog post, inshallah, in the description. But the green light means go, don't stop, and the red light means you have to stop. So these, meaning the types of stops, indicate that when you must stop and when you must not stop. Imagine if you are at a green light and you don't move. What's going to happen? You can get into an accident. Somebody might hit you from the back. And if you don't stop at a red light, what can happen? You can again get into an accident. It's dangerous. So similarly, whenever you see the word or see this symbol, the la symbol, lam alif, that means don't stop. Stopping is prohibited. And meme, you must stop you continuing is prohibited. And we're going to go over this. Basically, the rest of the presentation today is details of this visual. You can print this visual out somewhere, point it, like keep it somewhere if you like, you want to use it, that's fine. It's a great visual. We're going to go into some details and the purpose of all of these in today's video. This is a much more succinct way of giving you these rules. The details of it we're going to discuss today. So the first we're going to talk about is what we call the la, or the prohibited stop, in which case you must not stop. This stop is also, or this mark, the la mark, is also called waqf mamnu, or the prohibited stop. And when you see this, it means you must not stop. Think of the green light, because stopping at this point can actually change the meaning of the Quran. And some of the, I wanted to find some examples for English speakers. Um, Imagine if you had this as a recipe for goat cheese salad, right? The ingredients you need for goat cheese salad is lettuce, tomatoes, goat, and cheese. You'd be thinking, no, wait, I would be eating a goat with my goat cheese salad? That's not very vegetarian, is it? It's not. So, goat cheese salad ingredients, what you would need is lettuce, tomatoes, and goat cheese, right? If you stop between goat and cheese, you're implying that you need a goat, or you need to be eating a goat with your goat cheese salad, which would be incorrect. The same thing is, this is the title of a very funny slash famous book on punctuation and grammar. It's called Eats, Shoots, and Leaves. Now, well, goat can eat shoots and leaves, right? But if you say eats, shoots, and leaves, if you give those pauses, if you stop at those points, what happens? Well, you're implying that whatever this is, it eats, shoots something with a gun, and then leaves, meaning goes away. But if you say eats, shoots, and leaves, and you say that properly, and the proper stop, meaning you don't stop at where you're not supposed to stop, then the meaning is correct. So you have to make sure that you must not stop at these points, but this is a special symbol that is not present in certain scripts. What this means is certain scripts, especially the one that I have given you, which is the blue Quran script, the blue Quran that is printed from Saudi. I don't think it's present in that script. I'm fairly certain it's not present in that script. But this problem of, hey, when must I not stop if it's not there? How am I supposed to know? If it's not present, don't worry. You can very easily, uh, basically, very easily avoid this problem by starting from a few words back from where you had to break your breath. If you had to break your breath at a word, just go back 3 or 4 words and start again, and the meaning won't change. If you had to break a breath at a point where you didn't know that was a prohibited stop, you can go back a few words and you can continue. So if you see the lam alif in your script, don't stop. Don't stop. Keep going. But if you don't, the only thing to remember is just if you had to break a breath at some point, read back from a few words from where you stopped. And you've probably seen me recite before. Go ahead, follow that. I recite whenever I have to break my breath. I reset back from 3 or 4 words, or sometimes 2 or 3 words, to make sure that I have coverage. Okay, so let's continue with an example. On this screen, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الذين تتوفاهم الملائكة طيبين يقولون سلام عليكم. Now, this is the lam alif, the tiny diacritic that you see my mouse hovering over right there. That is, this mark is what you're looking for. This isn't the one indicating that no, don't stop, keep going. Like I said just a second ago, some scripts don't have this mark, some do. I took this example from Quran.com, which does have this, but the blue Quran that I have provided PDF links to you for before, it doesn't have it. So again, the only thing to keep remember is that if you do have to break a breath, but in case you're reading from a script that doesn't have this, just read back from a few words and you'll be fine. Like 3 or 4 words and you should be fine. Next is the tiny meme. This is the next mark indicating that is most important, which is that when you must stop, also called the waqf lazim or mandatory stop. And when you see this tiny meme, it means that you have to stop. You must stop. And this means that if you don't stop at this point, you can change the meaning. And I've picked a silly little sentence from the English language to indicate this below, which is, in this case, if I don't stop or if I don't, uh, follow this stop rule, then what can happen? So, my favorite things are cooking my family and not using commas. So you must be thinking, whoa, I cook my family? No, I obviously don't cook my family. I should have said, my favorite things are cooking my family, and then I should have continued. Because if I was to say, my favorite things are cooking my family and not using commas, then I'm indicating that I'm going to cook my family. That's not what I mean here at all. What I mean here is I like to cook, and well, no, not me, technically. I don't like to cook, but you get what I mean. This is just an example sentence. Very similar is a problem if you see this mandatory stop and you don't stop but you continue, then it can change the meaning. So here's an example. وَلَا يَحْزُنْكَ قَوْلُهُمْ. This point, this little meme right here on this قَوْلُهُمْ, you must stop here, okay? Because if you don't, it can change the meaning. So this little tiny meme that you see on top right here, that's your well, not technically a diacritic, that's your indicator, that's your mark letting you know that this, you have to stop, you must stop. So, وَلَا يَحْزُنْكَ قَوْلُهُمْ إِنَّ الْعِزَّةَ لِلَّهِ جَمِيعًا هُوَ السَّمِيعُ الْعَلِيمُ. So, this little mark, this little meme right here is your indicator that you must stop. Then there are 2 sub-rules of when you must stop. These sub-rules you must also keep in mind, and again, you can print that little visual that I have given you in the PowerPoint presentation. I'll give the link to the PowerPoint presentation below. And the 2 sub-rules are related to the scene and 2 sets of 3 dots. The scene that is called the sakta or a pause. And when you see this one, you have to do what's called a breathless stop or almost a pause, which means you have to pause, not take a breath, and continue. I'll tell you what I mean by that in just a second. I'll give you an example. And also the next one, which is the embracing stop, is when you see 2 sets of 3 dots somewhere in the font. And there's a very famous example. This one is at the very beginning of Surah Al-Baqarah. And that's the example I'll give you in just a second. And that's when you see 2 sets of 3 dots, you must stop at one of those points, but not at both, right? So you can choose to stop at the first set of 3 dots, or you can choose to stop at the second set of 3 dots, but you cannot stop at both of them, and you cannot continue on both of them. You must stop at one or the other, but not both. I hope that's clear. So that's going to be mu'anaqa, or the embracing stop. So this little scene right here, this is the example of the sakta, which is the first bullet point that you see on your screen right there. And these 3 little dots that you see right here, these are the examples of the embracing or the mu'anaqa. This is pronounced وَقِيلَ مَنْ رَاقٍ. Now notice, I stopped at man, but I did not take a breath. I said وَقِيلَ مَنْ رَاقٍ. So when you see this little scene indicating the sakta, you have to pause, don't take a breath, and continue. Just a short pause and continue. Now, this next example is when you see these three dots. These indicate that you must stop either here, لا ريب, or you must stop here, لا ريب فيه, but not both and not neither. That would be a problem. So the two ways that you can read this is ذلك الكتاب لا ريب فيه هدى للمتقين. Or you can read it like this ذلك الكتاب لا ريب فيه هدى للمتقين. Those are the two ways that you can read this. But you cannot continue, meaning you can't do it like this. ذلك الكتاب لا ريب فيه هدى للمتقين. That's incorrect. And you cannot stop at both of them, which would be ذلك الكتاب لا ريب فيه هدى للمتقين. No, you must stop at one or the other and not both. You cannot stop at both and you cannot stop at neither. You have to pick one and stop there. I hope that's clear. The next three marks are called the qili, jim, and sli. When you see the qili, it is better to stop, but continuing is allowed. This mark um, indicates that, hey, continue you can, but if it's better if you were to stop at this point. Jim indicates that stopping or continuing are equally allowed. No problem in either one. But when you see the sli, continuing is better, but stopping is allowed. But I recommend this for beginner. If this becomes hard to keep track of, then simply stop at all three. Meaning, um, if you're in the middle and all of a sudden you start finding difficulty to remember if qili, jim, sili, which one is which, etc., can't remember, is sili the one that's better to stop, or is qili the one better to stop, or I don't remember. So for beginners, if this becomes hard to keep track of, just simply stop at all three. And it's a good practice. It gives you, breathing room, and it reduces your likelihood of mistakes. Because even on the qili, it is better to stop, but continuing is allowed. So, and even on the sili, it is better to continue, but stopping is allowed. So, in either case, in any of these three cases, stopping is okay. Stopping is fine. It's allowed. Okay. So, if it becomes difficult for you to keep track of, just stop at all three. So now these are the examples that you see on your screen. This indicator, this mark right here, qili, indicates it's better to stop. Continuing is allowed. Jim is both equally allowed. And sili, it's better to continue, but stopping is allowed. So I hope that's clear. So whenever you see these qili, jim, sili, just for at least for beginners, I would say you can stop at all three. No problems there. Another guideline that I'm giving you is you should stop at the end of a verse. And whenever I am teaching any beginner, I say follow the marking at the end of a verse and stop where a verse ends. You will sometimes hear advanced reciters continuing after, even when the verse has ended, and they'll combine two verses. And technically speaking, that's not incorrect. It's perfectly allowed, and you can continue reciting the very large part of the Quran without breaking your breath or without ever pausing, unless you come across, a mandatory stop or something. There's very large portions you can continue combining the verses, ignoring the slili, jim, qili, and keep going. But beginners should definitely follow the marking at the end of the verse and stop where a verse ends. And if you see this little, circular mark, it's in different mushafs, it's created differently, but it's usually circular with a number in the middle. So this is an example that you see on your screen. Whenever you see this, and It's at the end of a verse. Feel free to stop. Not feel free, especially if you're a beginner. Definitely stop at the end of the verse. But you might be asking, well, what are the rules? Can I continue? Why should I continue? Again, like I said at the beginning, you really want to get into the details of this, you can find a teacher at your local masjid, and they can give you the details of this, but that's not what this video is about. This is more for beginners. So whenever you see the circular mark containing a number that indicates the end of the verse, stop there. So I'm going to recite Surah Quraysh for you with and without stops. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم لإيلاف قريش إيلافهم رحلة الشتاء والصيف فليعبدوا رب هذا البيت الذي أطعمهم من جوع وآمنهم من خوف. And now I'm going to recite it without stops. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم لإيلاف قريش إيلافهم رحلة الشتاء والصيف فليعبدوا رب هذا البيت الذي أطعمهم من جوع وآمنهم من خوف. Excuse me. So, like I recited just a second ago, you can continue and recite a very large part of the Quran without ever having stopped, unless you come across a mandatory stop. Um, I hope that's clear. So the exercise that I'm going to assign to you today is find someone at your local masjid to help you and recite at least 2 pages to them. And after having read the pages, I want you to go over the verses that you recited to them and locate all the signs mentioned in this video and describe the sign and its rule. So for example, find this meme, find the sili, jim, qili, lam, alif, the la qili, jim, sili, meme. Um, um, so, and oh yeah, the scene and the three dots, the two pairs of three dots, sakta and ma'anaqa. Those are the 7 that we went over, and the 8th one, you don't have to do that one. That would be the circular mark indicating the end of the verse. That's your exercise for today. In conclusion, we learned the rules of stopping and when to stop. We're going to continue in the next video on how to stop, and I'm going to probably go over some of the rules on how to start as well. So if you like this video, please like the video down below. Help me by spreading this knowledge, by commenting, subscribing, and sharing the video. Jazakallah khair for watching. I will see you next time. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.